If you're a Silva Method practitioner, you're probably very familiar with the Laboratory and Counselors routine. It's a tool we teach in the Silva Method immersion of Silva Life and Intuition system, and it goes way back between 1944 and 1966 when Mr. Jose Silva, the founder, was doing his original research. I wanted to bring this up and share some thoughts with you because if you've been watching other videos, as you know, the Silva Method is the most copied, most imitated. There are some prominent people out there who are contributing to the myths surrounding it. So in this video, I'd like to give you some tips and some ideas to help dispel some of those myths. So first of all, the Laboratory and Counselors, for those of you who may not know, in a dynamic meditative state, it's a game we play where people, our students, imagine themselves in their ideal environment, their ideal workspace, their ideal living space, their place of recluse, their place of, their special getaway, their own private inner sanctum, if you will. It can be very meaningful to people in different ways, and people relate to it obviously differently. And part of where that comes from is we're doing a lot of things, a lot of work with intuition, a lot of work with absent healing. We're really stepping out of the box with our thinking, and for many people, we're exploring human consciousness in ways that they have not before. So on one level, the laboratory represents an environment that we create, that we make up on our own, that we select, that we're familiar with, we're comfortable with, we like. It doesn't matter whether it exists physically or not. It can be purely out of our imagination. And what I've observed after nearly 52 years of teaching this program is that it's very comforting. People love it. They feel at home with it. And when they feel at home and they're comfortable, it's easier for them to embrace any of the discomfort that goes along with personal development. Let's face it, if you're truly going to grow, if you're truly going to learn, if you're truly going to get rid of that which is holding you back, you have to do something different. And doing something different, changing, is a lot easier to say than it is to do. And you know that. So the first step is that they're in a mental state that they're comfortable. And in that quiet, relaxed state, they're more likely to have what? Creative insights. It helps people move out of fear-based thinking. It helps people to move out of scarcity consciousness or fear-based thinking, as I said, or survival type thinking. There's more to it that. However, the counselors imagine as if you had your own personal mentors, one male, one female, to guide you. Well, way back between 44 and 1966, when Mr. Silva was researching, one of his children, Isabel, was exploring, Jose was teaching her techniques for absent healing. And during this time of imagining people in her thoughts as if praying for them, projecting healing thoughts, she had what appeared to be a nightmare. She was uncomfortable. She was, again, I don't know how else to say it, a nightmare. So in response to that moment of fear, Jose came up with an idea. What if you had me there guiding you all the time? In your imagination, of course. She loved it. But instead, when she went to the board, she drew a little stick figure and named him Tomas and described this individual. And it was not anybody Jose knew of. It certainly wasn't him. And yet she knew she made this up. And yet he became very real for her in her imagination. And her confidence grew and her accuracy with her intuition grew substantially. And for that reason, Jose, first was like, oh, what am I doing here? But he was thrilled. That was the feedback. So they continued in that vein. As time went along, in her mind, in her thoughts, there were situations where she wasn't comfortable imagining Tom, a male, with her. So she went back to the drawing board and imagined a female to guide her. It wasn't meant to be sexist or anything like that. It was more just this 8-year-old's comfort. She was just playing a game. So again, there are many ways you could look at this and be inspired by it. over the decades as the lead instructor and training director, I haven't introduced myself, my name is Ken Coscia, what I've come to recognize as I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people and have been responsible for mentoring, I don't know how many hundreds of instructors throughout the decades. For many, it's a personification, the laboratory and counselors, a personification of their best self, a personification of their higher self. Now we know from metaphysical teaching, from philosophers throughout the ages, from spiritual guides throughout the ages, they often use the term, even in psychology, they use the term your authentic self, your higher self, your best self. A lot of ways to look at it. We know, though, fact, that you and I, we each have incredible human potential that throughout our lifetime doesn't seem to be tapped unless we recognize it and practice with it, and it helps to get the right training to bring that out. So for many, it serves as a metaphor, a symbolic representation of their best self. Now, why is that important? If you think about it, we do a little game, very few people find it easy to think of themselves as, I'm a genius. Yeah, right. Should have seen me yesterday, people say. And we usually give much more credit to other people. We usually have people in our life who we know, who we admire. Say, wow, what a great relationship. What an incredible human being. What a great inventor. What a skilled person. Or we know people from history we admire. We read their biographies. It seems to be, for many, much easier to give the credit to them rather than ourselves. So what we've found is it's a way to think out of the box. It's a way to activate intuition and imagine as if you could have a conversation with somebody, who would you like to have the conversation with? As if they're there with you, guiding you. Some call it modeling. You're modeling excellence. You're admiring excellence and saying, what if I were like that? What if I had his or her skills? And that's really what the counselors are all about. In the early days, we had a process, one of the dynamic meditation, where the instructor would count very slowly from 1 to 1. Well, excuse me, 1 to 1, 1 to 3. And then imagine first a male, and we go through this, it's a fun game that we play. And the intention was, who would you like to have? One male, one female. But be open to the spontaneity. Meaning, often we're biased. We have wishful thinking. We're biased with limiting beliefs. We're biased with, in the domain of our experience, what we think is possible. And that can influence who we might select. When we succeed in attuning to a subjective mode of consciousness associated with the alpha and theta brainwave state or meditative state, and we've activated some creative imagination, we're more likely, to come up with ideas that serve us better, that get us out of that stuck space, that stuck pattern of thought. So oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, people say, well, I know I'd like to have, okay, I know who I want, is one male, one female. But then as we go through the process, they have a very different experience, and it sort of pops into their mind. They think of someone, it could be their mom who's passed away. It could be a dear friend. It could be somebody from science. It could be somebody they never met in their imagination. And we would say, well, trust that experience and honor that. I heard in one of the videos, I'm going to be respectful, not mention the name, but if you've seen it, you know who I'm referring to, talking about animals. That was never, ever part of the process, never, ever taught by Jose. And if people ask that question, well, what if I don't want to have one male, one female? What if I want to have a pet? The answer would be no. It's meant to be somebody, human consciousness. So again, think of it as a game, my friends, that helps us to step out of the box in our thinking, to activate some intuitive wisdom. Because logically, we're governed by the numbers. The numbers don't lie. logically speaking, with rational thought, we only know what we know. Just like in science, they know what they know based on the empirical evidence today. In fact, next year it may change. And certainly in the years to come it may change. But the role of the scientist is to go by the facts. When we're working at a creative dimension while in a meditative state, we're in a field of possibilities. We're considering what could be possible. The challenge is physically working on figuring out how to make it so, how to make it manifest physically in the world. So it's multifaceted. So it's a really fun process. For some people, the Laboratory and Counselors is a moving spiritual experience for them. And they think of a spiritual leader from the past as if this person were guiding them. So it's meant to be fun and insightful, and ideally where we're stepping out of the box and considering possibilities as what could be possible for us if we had the genius of all times guiding us. Who might that be? Or somebody who can help us to figure things out. It's a way to put your subconscious to work for you. So I hope that helps. And one day perhaps we'll meet in the class. It's a fun class. We do this now in the end of day number 2 in the immersion of Silva Life and Intuition System. And there's so much more that precedes it, that builds and prepares us for that. However, I hope that I did some justice and help you to understand it a bit more. Thanks for watching.